Australia is committing over $300 billion to AUKUS, a plan built around nuclear-powered submarines. But the problem is the United States and the United Kingdom are already struggling to build enough submarines for themselves. And then delays are starting to grow across both programs, putting the entire timeline under pressure. So what happens if those submarines arrive too late? Or never arrive at all? AUKUS was announced in 2021 as a major defense partnership between Australia, the United States, and the United Kingdom. Its core mission is clear: deliver nuclear-powered submarines and expand long-range deterrence across the Indo Pacific. This plan is not just military. It is a strategic shift in how Australia projects power. The agreement unfolds in stages over many years, starting with Allied submarine rotations through Australian bases. Then Australia plans to acquire Virginia-class submarines from the United States. And then a new SSN AUKUS submarine is developed with the United Kingdom. Each phase depends on steady industrial output and precise coordination between all three partners. This matters far beyond Australia, because it directly shapes the regional balance against China's growing naval power. The Indo Pacific is becoming more contested, with expanding fleets and stronger A2AD zones. The problem is this entire strategy depends on timing, and that timing is starting to slip. This is where things change. The United States is already behind its submarine production targets. The Navy plans to deliver 2 Virginia-class submarines each year. But production often falls short due to workforce shortages and supply delays. And then the same shipyards must also build Columbia-class submarines. The problem is Columbia-class is the highest national priority. It supports nuclear deterrence. So when capacity becomes limited, other commitments start to slip. Australia depends on those same production lines for its future fleet. This creates a direct conflict between alliance promises and national defense needs. Now shift to the United Kingdom, where the pressure is even more intense. Its industry is smaller and already focused on dreadnought submarines. And then it must also help design and build SSN AUKUS. So what happens when both allies reach their limits? And Australia is still waiting for submarines. So what is really driving this problem? Is it funding or something deeper? The answer is industrial capacity. And this is where things get complicated. Submarines take many years to design and build, and each unit requires precision engineering. The problem is production cannot scale quickly, even when demand suddenly increases. But why is capacity so limited now? Especially for the United States and the United Kingdom. After the Cold War, both countries reduced shipbuilding industries and workforce pipelines. Factories closed, skilled workers retired, and supply chains became thinner. And then demand returned. But rebuilding capacity takes decades, not years. Now consider the workforce problem, which is often underestimated in public discussions. Building nuclear submarines requires highly trained engineers and technicians. These skills take years to develop, and training pipelines remain limited. So even with more funding, the number of qualified workers cannot grow fast enough. This leads to a deeper question. Who gets priority when capacity is limited? The answer is simple. National survival programs always come first. The United States prioritizes its own fleet against China, and the United Kingdom prioritizes nuclear deterrence. So where does that leave Australia? When every partner faces its own constraints. But here is the strategic risk. Australia depends entirely on external timelines and decisions. Its current submarine fleet is aging, and upgrades only delay retirement for a limited time. And then a capability gap becomes possible, especially if delays continue to grow. This is where things become dangerous, because timing shapes deterrence as much as capability. Now shift to the regional environment, which continues to evolve at a rapid pace. China Navy expands steadily, adding more ships and strengthening A2AD zones. And then pressure increases across key maritime routes in the Indo Pacific. So while AUKUS moves slowly, the strategic environment moves much faster. But here is something less obvious. Timing may matter more than capability itself. A submarine delivered too late may not influence any real conflict outcome. Deterrence works only when capability is present, not when it is planned. So the real question becomes, is AUKUS aligned with the timeline of risk? And then there is the complexity factor, which adds another layer of uncertainty. 3 countries must coordinate policies, industries, and long-term investments. Each has different priorities, budgets, and political pressures. This is where things get complicated, because even small delays can ripple across the entire program. So is AUKUS too ambitious, or simply too slow for current conditions? The answer may be both, and that is what creates tension. The plan itself is strategically sound, but execution depends on fragile assumptions. And those assumptions are now being tested under real-world pressure. Now imagine the early 2030s. Tensions rise quickly across the Indo Pacific. China increases naval patrols near key sea lanes and disputed waters. And then Allied forces respond with joint deployments and surveillance operations. But Australia still waits. Its new submarines are not yet operational. And then a regional crisis erupts, triggered by a confrontation at sea. Chinese vessels push deeper into contested zones, supported by strong A2AD coverage. The United States moves carrier groups forward, but must also protect its own interests first. This is where everything changes. Australia cannot project undersea power at the critical moment. Suddenly the gap becomes real, not theoretical as before. Australian forces rely on aging submarines and limited reach. And then coordination slows, as allies prioritize their own strategic needs. But here's the twist. AUKUS still exists, yet its promised capability is not ready when needed most. In the end, this reveals something deeper than submarine delays alone. AUKUS is not just about platforms. It is about trust in long-term alliances. But trust depends on delivery. And delivery depends on time and capacity. The real question is not whether AUKUS will exist, but whether it will arrive when it still matters. This is where the strategic picture becomes more uncertain. The Indo Pacific is changing faster than any long-term program can adapt. And then timing becomes the decisive factor, not just capability or technology. So the real question is simple. Can alliances move fast enough in a world that no longer slows down?